Hi everyone, welcome to my Adult Second Language Acquisition Research Project. My name is Maria Urban. Let's get started. Before we get started with the actual content of the presentation, I wanted to look at the outline of what I plan to present. I'm going to start with the introduction and then I'm going to move on to source 1, 2, 3, and 4. For reference, at the bottom of each source page, I will have the authors so that all quotations on that source, you will know where they come from, and you can reference those on my actual works cited and source page at the end of the presentation. So as an introduction, I additionally wanted to research the challenges that adults face during that second language acquisition process. And upon further research, I realized it was very repetitive because we know those challenges. Our textbooks outline those, and some of those supplemental reading sources outline those for us already. We know those challenges. So, in turn, being that I am an education major, I wanted to investigate the ways we are combating those challenges. We know them, but how are we trying to solve them? Especially to create a classroom environment that is conducive to learning, that's going to be beneficial to our adult language acquisition students. Okay, so now that we know where I'm planning on heading with this presentation, I wanted to outline for you all 4 sources that I felt could be beneficial for SLA future training modules for teachers and educators, not only to show them how they can outline classes, but also I feel like it could be beneficial for educators who have ESOL students in their class. This is more geared toward adult language learners. However, I feel like they could be reflected into some of our high school classes because those are emerging adults, and I feel like they would be mature and competent enough to use these strategies. For source 1, it's in Who Are Adult Language Learners? Are Adult Language Learners an overview source? All right, this source by Smith and Strong, again, located at the bottom of the slide. They look at who are adult language learners. Adult language learners are complex, being that they have already gone through traditional school. Majority, if not all, are in careers or jobs. They have multiple identities. They are parents, they are co-workers, they, are members of society. They have multiple identities, which means they have wide range of potential and they know where they want to be in the future. They have goals and they know their place in a community context. Adults are more mature, they're competent, and they're multi-talented because of those complex lives and those variety of roles that they fill. Being that they've already been through traditional school, they know their learning styles, and they can communicate those better than children and adolescents can. They're goal oriented. They're coming back to learn the second language, not because they have to, but because they want to. They know what they want for themselves. They know their needs and their demands, and they're wanting to fulfill those goals that they have. They may be coming back to school to process up their career ladder, to advance studies, for business opportunities. Maybe they want to pass a driving test or assist their children in homework, or simply because they want to learn a new language. Maybe they want to travel, and so on and so forth. Because they are very unique in their attributes as they are students, they have created a term called andragogy, a word that distinguishes the field of adult language learner against pedagogy, which is, of course, the adolescent's term for teaching and design structures. Smith and Strong, when looking at who are our adult language learners, they also came up with some suggested features that can be structured in adult language learning classes. They start with the idea of beginning with a humanistic approach. You're looking at your students as a person. They have feelings. They're sensitive to topics. They have emotions. They're not just a paycheck. They're not someone who have to fulfill your grades. They are humans. They have feelings. Understand that you need to foster and develop their confidence and self-esteem. And by doing so, teachers need to create a relaxed environment to reduce anxiety. Our students, both adolescents and adults, cannot learn in an environment where they feel anxious. So we need to motivate them and give them that confidence in our classrooms. We also need to foster their willingness to cooperate and collaborate with each other. Oftentimes, again, in adolescents and adults, we often don't want to communicate with people we don't know or we feel uncomfortable with. But when you foster a classroom where collaboration is key, it triggers those listening actively skills and asking questions and sharing opinions, and they're all welcome. They're not, debated. We're sharing our feelings and emotions, and we're able to collaborate with each other whether we agree or disagree with those. We actively engage adult learners to assist the teacher in the sense of they're adults, educators aren't adults, we're equals in that sense. So having that communication where you can speak to each other as equals, they can help your enthusiasm to maintain that enthusiasm that is going to guide the class. If you're enthusiastic about what you're teaching, they will be enthusiastic about learning. They also suggest using realistic role plays to discuss things and topics of one another, especially things that are controversial. When you role play in a classroom, it gives them a sense and an idea of how they could face it in a real life situation. They also recommend using terms such as active, able to manage, critically reflective, self-confident, self-determining, motivated, and responsible for learning to give adults a sense that they are in charge of what they learn, in the sense that they decide whether they're going to be attentive to your class, whether they're going to push themselves to complete work, to reach out and speak out, and so on and so forth. Source 2, Andragogy Adult Learning Theory, is actually looking at the structure of the andragogy cycle against the pedagogy cycle. So this chart was actually created by Instructional Design Australia, and they're looking at the art and science of helping adults learn. There are 5 key concepts: self-concept, readiness, motivation, experience, and orientation. And within those, there are sub-modules, but the main idea of each are as followed. For self-concept, adults are self-directed, they're goal-oriented. For readiness, adults want to learn things that are relevant to them in a real life context. They want to be ready for what society throws at them. Motivation, they're motivated by different values that fit their needs. Again, like jobs or for their children, life, travel, and so on. Their experience, they're bringing in a wide variety of experience because they have already experienced the world. They've gone through that traditional schools. They're in careers, so they're bringing a wide variety of experience. In orientation, adults are engaged by learning that is problem-centered and practical. They want to solve problems and use that to, again, reflect in their real-life scenarios. So I'll give you a minute to look at those sub-modules. Moving along is source 3, the second language acquisition in adults from research to practice. And we're going to look at some methods for, again, teaching our adult language learners. Something that is reiterated throughout all the research is motivation. Motivation for adult learners. But what motivates them? According to the source, there are 2 different types of motivation. There's instrumental motivation and integrative motivation. Instrumental is what they want to learn to meet their needs and goals. And then integrative is wanting to learn to find their place in society, to identify within a community that they may not identify with quite yet. So how do we foster this motivation? So teachers can facilitate motivation by helping learners identify short-term goals that reflect their progress and achievements. Adults want to see how far they're progressing. That this isn't for nothing. They want to see, okay, well, we accomplished this. What's our next goal? Where is the end goal? A learner's motivation may vary day to day and even from task to task. So they recommend using a variety challenging instructional activities to help them stay focused. Motivation from day to day can vary, meaning that again they live these complex lives, they have these things different going on, and some days they may not be with it like they were the previous day. So if we incorporate activities that keep them focused and engaged, they're going to put their attention into the class rather than those outside sources and outside activities that may be going on. Social factors may motivate our students. They affect our learners' attitude, effort, classroom behavior, and achievement. Again, they have so many things going on in their lives. So we need to create a classroom environment that is cohesive and conducive to learning. They want to know their place in society. So let's put them in pairs, let's put them in groups, and give them opportunities to share their social experiences, to learn more about others, to build that community inside of the classroom. And also, we don't want what we're doing in the classroom to go away in the outside. So let's create projects that build a bridge between practice inside and outside of the classroom. Let's keep that learning going even when they go home. So based upon the motivations that we looked at from the previous slide, Moss and Feldman provided instructions and teaching strategies that can be implemented in classrooms for adults. This slide is hefty, but I'm just going to summarize the 4 key points that are mentioned in the source: interaction, task-based teaching, focus on form, and vocabulary. Interaction, let's look at the bullet slide that says interactive hypothesis. It states that the conversational interaction facilitates language acquisition because it connects input, what learners hear and read, to what they produce in productive ways. So let's make sure that we're actually teaching them something, that what they're taking in is being produced. Task-based teaching is giving our students a goal to exchange means rather than just simply what they learned, to give them authentic interactions between learners so that they can use these for problem-solving skills in real-life scenarios. Focus on form is to draw attention to grammatical forms in meaningful activities. Rather than just focusing on grammar itself in an isolated task, let's put these to meaningful activities. Why is this grammatical structure important in communication? What type of discrepancies can be caused if we don't use these grammar forms when speaking with others and in real life scenarios? And vocabulary goes along with that task-based teaching. Vocabulary that will be used in a real life task. Rather than just giving them a bunch of new words they have to learn, let's look at vocabularies that they can actually use in conversations. Things that will be able to help them express their wants and their needs. So source 4 is kind of a shift. We're going to look at strategies that our learners use to obtain information and how we can, as educators, make sure that they're using these strategies correctly and for beneficial purposes rather than discrepancies in information between each other. So some of the direct strategies that our learners use are memory strategies, cognitive strategies, and compensation strategies. Memory strategies are employed for storing and retrieving new information. This is how they retain information. This is how they keep it in those stored memory processes in the brain. So in order to foster beneficial memory storage, teachers can create mental linkages, to applying images and sound to what they're learning. 3, actively reviewing, keeping that information always in maintenance in the brain, and 4, employing action. So this has a lot to do with those kinesthetic, auditory, visual learning styles, making sure that we're employing all of those strategies to better hold on to memory. Our cognitive strategies are for manipulating and transforming the target language. This recommended strategies for teachers are constantly practicing those targeted language, receiving and sending messages. So not only do they need to be answering questions, but they need to be asking questions in that target language. They need to analyze and reason why the target language does the certain things that they do. Why is it important to learn these grammatical structures, etc. 4, creating structure between input and output. Again, we're analyzing and reasoning those sending and receiving messages. What we're putting in needs to sound like what we're putting out. If we're saying that this grammatical structure needs to be said this way, we need to make sure our learners are actually saying it that way and making sure there's not a barrier between that input and output. Our compensation strategies are what learners use for comprehension and production, regardless of limited knowledge of the language. If they're compensating what they don't know with something that is incorrect, that can be detrimental. So in order to keep that from happening, we need to allow intellectual guesses and listening and reading, and teaching overcoming limitations in speaking and writing. It's okay to make mistakes, but let's fix those before we compensate what we don't know with incorrect answers. On this slide, we have indirect strategies. These are strategies that affect learning but don't directly use the target language. Our metacognitive strategies, affective strategies, and social strategies. Metacognitive strategies are actions which go beyond purely cognitive devices, which provides a way for learners to coordinate their own learning processes. This has to do with those learning styles. Adults know their learning styles, so they're going to use metacognitive strategies that are beneficial to them. That way they can learn. Recommended strategies for fostering this are center learning around focused language activities or skills. What do we need to learn this week? Let's only look at that. Let's not look at anything outside and go beyond that. You need to arrange, plan, and organize a focus for learners to maximize that benefit. Again, we don't need to look out anything else but what we're targeting for that week. Put all your energy and effort into that. And evaluating learning helps learners with problems, monitoring errors, and evaluating their processes and their progress. Let's make those slow and short-term goals, which have been reflected in some of those previous sources we looked at. Let's have those short-term goals. Let's make sure we're fixing the problems before it's too late. Effective strategies refer to learners' emotional attitudes and motivation and values. This is those influences within the person that affect how much information they will receive for that day. So again, we have a recommendation to lower anxiety in the classroom for that self-encouragement. Telling students to take emotional temperature before learning. If you know that you are having an extremely bad day, it's not beneficial for the student to be within the classroom. They're not going to be retaining the information. Let's take that emotional temperature. How am I feeling today? Am I in the mood to receive information? Because if I'm not 100% there in the class, I'm going to be taking bits and pieces of what the teacher learned, and I can compensate those, and it's not going to be effective for me, and I'm going to be learning the wrong information. So let's make sure that our students are taking those temperatures and lowering those anxieties and having that self-encouragement to get through the day. Our social strategies refer to learners' communication with people who use the target language. We want to make sure our students are having real life interactions. They're conversating with target language speakers. Does our students need to be fluent in that language? No, but they at least can speak and hear the language Allow cooperation with others who speak that language. Let's sit down. Let's have those face-to-face interactions. Or let's have two target language learners speak and model how it should sound, how interaction and facial expressions and so on and so forth work in a real life social setting. And also, we need to teach our students to empathize with our target language speakers. You have to be in their shoes in order to learn the language. All right, so we've reached the end of my presentation, but I did want to bring in that discussion question for my viewers to answer. In your time at CSU, have you taken a foreign language course? If yes, has your professor implemented any of the suggested strategies that have been mentioned in my presentation? What strategies did they use? How did you respond to those strategies? If no, why did you refrain from taking a foreign language course? Would you take a foreign language course in the future? And how would you want that foreign language class to be structured? Here are my sources for the presentation. Thank you all for watching my presentation. My name is Maria Urban, and I provided my email here for any of you all who have any further questions about what I have mentioned in my presentation. Again, thank you.